Oh, yes, we're about to open this can of worms up all the way. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to start the trial of the 30-06. Is it a boomer cartridge that we need to take out to the pasture and just end its misery? Do friends let friends buy the 30-06? We're about to find out. Without further ado, let's introduce the defendants. Number one is my Mauser M18. Bought it about 6 months ago. It's kind of what got me started into doing shorts and YouTube videos, and so far it's the video you seem to like the most on my channel. I really appreciate all the views and subscribers. The rifle on the left was my great-grandfather's Winchester Model 70. He bought it back in the late 60s, early 70s, and it was his main hunting rifle, and he ended up passing it down to my father. It was kind of a rust bucket by the time my father got it, and the local gunsmith helped him replace the stock that was broken and put a new barrel on it, and now the thing is a fantastic shooter. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it's sub-minute like every other redneck out there, but it is a great hunting rifle. The other cast member that you'll be seeing is my brother's B14 HMR and 300 Winchester Magnum. This rifle we've done a lot of testing with and playing with. It was his buy once, cry once option, and man, it's a fantastic shooter as well. So let's kick this trial off. The prosecution says this is a boomer cartridge. It should not even be recommended. Its design is antiquated and old, and there are much better options out there to recommend to your friends. The defense attorney for the 30-06 would state this cartridge is one of the most versatile cartridges that you can buy. The other rebuttal offered by the defense is that this cartridge with modern components and projectiles still fits a niche that a lot of the modern cartridges don't. Before the trial could even get started, the jury has already come to a conclusion. The M1 Garand shoots the 30-06, therefore it's the best, and we won 2 world wars with it. The first piece of evidence we're going to look at is the typical big game hunting bullets that you would be finding in these cartridges. The first one is the 30-06 with 172 grain spear impact. We have the 300 Winchester Magnum with 190 grain AccuBond long range. We have the 6.5 Creedmoor with 142 grain AccuBond long range. We have the 7mm PRC with a 175 grain ELDX. We have the 6.8 Western with 165 grain AccuBond long range. And then we have the 308 Winchester with the 165 grain AccuBond. All of these cartridges are fairly similar in BC, and they should give us a good representation of what they're doing at distance as far as their. For this particular chart, we have the 30-06 out of my rifle is doing 2,800 feet per second. The 300 Winchester Magnum is doing 3,000 feet per second. The 6.5 Creedmoor is doing 2,650 feet per second. The 7mm PRC is doing 3,000, advertised velocity, right? The 6.8 Western is doing 2,900. And finally, the 308 Winchester is doing 2,600 feet per second with these particular loads. These are averages for all the different cartridges for the highest velocity you can achieve out of the reloading data book. I know you can push things faster with all these cartridges when you hand load, but we're trying to give these cartridges the most fair shake across the board. We're trying to stay within the boundaries of what the manufacturers say, so we can be as close to factory ammo or factory offerings as possible. As a standard to compare the energy levels and what you can achieve, we're going to use a reference out of P.O. Ackley's guide for hand loaders and shooters. He has a very great little section on the energy required for different types of game. So if we look at the chart, you'll notice that the 30-06 with standard big game bullets falls right in the middle and actually almost mirrors the 6.8 Western quite a bit. Obviously it's lower. Obviously the 6.8 Western stays high and stays ahead for quite a bit longer. If you look at the chart, you'll also notice that 30-06 is one of the only 4 cartridges albeit very early in the game, seems to have enough energy for a dangerous game. P.O. Ackley puts this at about a 600-pound animal, so moose, larger bear, stuff like that in North America. And if you look further on the right side of the chart, the 300 Winchester Magnum, the 30-06, the 7 PRC, and the 6.8 Western are the only 4 cartridges that have the minimum amount of energy to take elk, at least by his recommendations. Both the 6.5 Creedmoor and the 308 Winchester appear to have the right amount of energy for deer-sized game and down out to 500 yards. And if we take a look at the left-hand chart, all of these cartridges with these particular bullets will expand properly out to 500 yards. The only one that's getting close to the ragged edge is the 308 Winchester. I used 1,800 feet per second as the minimum. Most of these projectiles are listed at way less than that for minimum expansion, but that's a good worst case scenario to keep as a standard. So now let's present the evidence for large game loads. Say you just drew a tag for your first big game hunt on a large carnivore, or say you're on a hunt like us when we hunt in Colorado and we end up finding some interesting paw prints in the snow. If you want to have a cartridge load where you can be assured that you can at least be effective on a predator if you have the tag or if it's an emergency situation, we'll look at the energy numbers for those. For this set of data, we'll look at the heaviest load the 30-06 can shoot, which is a 220 grain round nose, and we'll compare it evenly with the heaviest projectiles that these other cartridges can shoot, which is the 300 Win Mag. They could shoot a lot heavier, but as far as your popular big game hunting loads, you'll have a 220 grain round nose as well. With the 6.5 Creedmoor, there's a 160 grain round nose. For the 7 PRC, your most common hunting load, once again, is going to be the 175 ELDX. I didn't find another heavy round nose to compare it to, so we just copied that data over. Same thing with the 6.8 Western. We kept the 165 AccuBong long range on there. With the 308 Winchester, we also have the 220 grain round nose loaded in it as well. And according to P.O. Ackley's preferred energy requirement for large game, moose, large bear, and other predators and whatnot, the 300 Win Mag is really the only one that passes the 3,500 foot-pound mark. The 7 PRC comes very, very close to it. The 6.8 Western barely passes what's considered adequate for large game, with the 30-06 very, very close to adequate, but definitely above the minimum. The 308 Winchester comes very close to the minimum requirement at 50 yards, but that's kind of stretching it. And the 6.5 Creedmoor is quite a bit down to be considered even at the minimum. When we look at velocity at distance, obviously the 7 PRC and the 6.8 Western are going to carry their energy further because they're different bullet design. However, the 300 Winchester Magnum lasts out to 400 yards to have proper expansion. And the 30-06 is actually just a hair under that to 300 yards. The 6.5 Creedmoor maintains that energy out to about 250 or so. And the 308 Winchester has the minimum expansion velocity lost right around 200 yards. So if we're looking at energy, the king would be the 300 Winchester Magnum, and eventually gets overtaken by the 7 PRC out to 500 yards. And it looks like the 30-06 is holding in there out to about 150. So next we're going to look at my favorite side of reloading and or hunting is the light and fast crowd. I love the 25-06 Ackley improved, 257 Weatherby, any of the 6mm light and fast cartridges, the 220 Swift. Let's see how well these cartridges perform at that game. So for the 30-06, the 300 Winchester Magnum, and the 308, we have the Barnes 120 grain TAC TX. That's a load that I just developed. For the 300 Win Mag, we went with book data as well as the 308 Winchester. With the 6.5 Creedmoor, we went with the 123 SST. That's one of my favorite projectiles that I've loaded in the Creedmoor. And I didn't see much load data for the 7PRC for that light of a projectile. The closest thing I found was a 150. That's not really fair, so we left that out for this one. So for our 5 cartridges that we did showcase, obviously the 300 Win Mag is going to dominate the 30-06, as well as the 6.8 Western. That one had a 130 grain Accubon. The 30-06 and the 308 Winchester are neck and neck for velocity. The 308 Winchester actually is quite a bit more efficient when pushing that projectile. And the 6.5 Creedmoor is quite a bit below that, but over time, obviously, with a higher BC, it's going to pull away. Interesting enough, the 300 Winchester Magnum from 50 to about 100 yards actually maintains enough energy to be a minimum for dangerous game, although I'm sure every dangerous game hunter would tell you never to shoot something large with a 120 grain bullet. All of the rest of the cartridges maintain enough energy, at least per PO-Ackley, to be effective enough on the minimum side of elk or the preferred side of deer energy, which is right at 1,500 foot-pounds. The 30-06, the 308 Winchester, the 6.5 Creedmoor, and 300 yards or so for the minimum of elk, and all of them obviously make it to 500 for deer and antelope size animals. Next, we're going to take a look at the velocity and how it goes over distance. The 308 Winchester, the 30-06 are very close, almost neck and neck. The 6.8 Western falls just a hair under the 300 Winchester Magnum, and the 6.5 Creedmoor starts out the slowest, but overtakes the 308 and the 30-06 out to about 400 yards or so. But all of these cartridges will absolutely open up at that distance and be effective as far as expansion is concerned. Okay, now the trial will go into recess. I will ask you, the jury, to go take a break and do not discuss the trial amongst yourselves or with anyone else, and we will come back to take a look at efficiency and the rest of the evidence against the 30-06 and for the 30-06. Thank you very much for watching, and I, the judge, will see you at the next session of the trial. Thank you very much. Goodbye.